Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It is Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. I am Andrew Hansen alongside Shane Caldwell, and this is the Thursday night preview, NFL DFS. It's the Green Bay Packers traveling to take on the San Francisco 49ers. And Shane, what an easy slate to prepare for. Not any news whatsoever.
Yeah, there's so much news that people are worried about this game being canceled. But,
Yeah.
the NFL, they're pretty sneaky at getting these games in and kind of, maneuvering their way around the COVID stuff and all the injuries. And they have a plan for it. So, yeah, we're going to get introduced to some practice squad guys this week. And that's why it's kind of exciting that we have all this news and we can get all this information into a short podcast video for everyone so that they could break it down without having to go to all these different injury reports. We're going to be able to simplify it for everyone so you can build some awesome showdown lineups because there's some huge contests out there.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been grinding here all evening on Wednesday, incorporating all the recent news, updated news, and we're going to continue to do it on Thursday. And if there was ever a time to join us as a member, this is it. For the reasons you said, Shane, we're going to do all the hard work for you. Dig into the profiles of these practice squad players who are going to be added to the mix, and monitor everything right up until kickoff when we give out our members' lineups. And what we do is on FanDuel, we give out a full cash lineup, a full GPP lineup, and then the coach's clipboard on Draftkings. On the main slate, that's got some core players and a bunch of pivots. And then for the Showdown slate, it just has our core players, cash core, GPP core. So love to have you join us. Go to dfscoachtalk.com. Try out one of our memberships a week or a month, or the winter special takes you through the end of the football season. Get all of our lineups in all of our sports. We do NBA, PGA, MLB as well. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to keep grinding for these lineups for our members. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about both teams here. And so we can break it down so people can build their own lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel. So before we get into all the news here, just want to thank our presenting sponsor, BetUS.com.pa. Go there with the promo code CoachTalk with your first deposit. You get a 125% match. And this will be an interesting game to wager on once the lines go back up. Now, initially on BetUS, we had Green Bay as the 6-point favorites, over under 49.5. It has since been taken down. So they're incorporating the news. We'll see what the line is once it goes back up. But that's the starting point here. Of course, Green Bay, the favorites at 5-2 against the banged up San Francisco 49ers at 4-4. So, Shane, let's start with Green Bay. All right. And what we know right now is that Aaron Jones is questionable. We both think he's probably going to be out. So we're looking at Dexter Williams and Tyler Ervin as the key running backs. We'll talk about them more as we go. With the wide receivers, Allen Lazard is questionable. He's been on the IR, but he has traveled to San Francisco. If he comes back in, that's a big upgrade for the Green Bay passing core. So we'll keep our eye on that. Green Bay does have 3 members of their secondary out. So it'll be a little bit easier for San Francisco to pass on them if they can find anybody to pass it to. And then the offensive tackle, David Bakhtiari, is questionable. So we'll get to the San Francisco side here in a minute. But with the new running backs here, why don't we start with that? Because Aaron Rodgers has, he doesn't have his old reliables with him there. So how do you think this is going to play out for Green Bay with some new running backs in the mix?
Yeah, I mean, it's looking like Dexter Williams probably will be the guy, especially early down work. There's some information out there that he could also handle passing downs, but we haven't really seen him in that capacity. But being that he's a bigger back, and Tyler Ervin is more of a smaller kind of scat back, kind of a slash special teams wide receiver type player who plays running back really. So we're expecting Dexter Williams to probably handle the load here. Pretty tough matchup for running backs, though. San Francisco, even though they've lost all their guys, they're very fundamentally sound up front. They're very tough and physical. They tackle well. They fill the gaps well. So they're not really that easy to run against. So it's going to be tough for Green Bay, I think, in this matchup for running the ball. And I think that they will primarily lean on their passing game here. So these
Yeah,
running backs are minimum price. So
yeah, they are. I want to add a couple things there. Dexter Williams, like you said, about 20 pounds heavier than Irvin. And I heard a quote from Aaron Rodgers this week praising him for his pass blocking, his route running. And that's why I think he's going to be the three down back. And, looking at the tape from their last game against Minnesota, Tyler Irvin was split out wide a bunch. He would go in motion and get these short passes. He's just not the three down back type player. He doesn't really fit that profile. So I agree. I think Williams will get the chance at more carries. Irvin will certainly be involved, and they are minimum price, so you can get either one of them in your lineups. But carry on with your analysis here of this Green Bay offense.
I think the one thing I noticed with Tyler Irvin, though, is when he does get the ball, he's super explosive. I mean, he's like one of those 4.3, 4.4 speed type guys. So he is a big play waiting to happen. If he gets some room, he can really bust off some big plays. So that's why I think he's still in play, even though we're thinking that Dexter Williams might get more carries. I could see Tyler Irvin being better in the passing game and getting him in space more, because this isn't the type of matchup, especially these inexperienced running backs, where you just want to pound it between the tackles with your run game. So I could see them spreading it out and using Tyler Irvin more. So that's why I think he's in play, even though Dexter Williams would probably get more carries here. So that's why it's a tough decision. If you're playing multiple lineups, you could mix it up and play both of these running backs, in different lineups, just because I don't know that Dexter Williams is going to really be that efficient, and we don't really know. But yeah, if the role is there though. So and then of course, I mean, I was joking with you before this podcast. I'm like, what is the ownership going to be in a showdown slate? The way this is shaping up on Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, I'm like, what's the highest you've ever seen? Like usually 90% is pretty ridiculous, right? So are these guys going to be like 98% owned? I mean, 99, it's like a couple percent of the field will be contrarian. Right. So that's kind of interesting. So Aaron Rodgers obviously is set up for pretty big volume here because of their perceived weak running game and a tough matchup. Obviously you saw Russell Wilson didn't even need that much volume really to pick them apart, San Francisco apart last week. They did really well. And the Davante Adams.
All you needed was DK Metcalf.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else?
Yeah, and the interesting thing, speaking of DK Metcalf, is I was worried about him last week, and you were 100% right on him. He did awesome, and Tyler Lockett took a backseat. But I was worried about Jason Verrett, who's the best remaining cover corner for San Francisco. He's been great. He's really shut down in his coverage. He's done great. Really tough to throw against. And what happened was DK Metcalf was on Emmanuel Mosley a lot of the game, and he was roasting Emmanuel Mosley for those long touchdowns. So for some reason they didn't shadow. But Pro Football Focus is, and I agree with them, they're projecting that Jason Verrett will shadow Davante Adams because there's not really another receiving threat. So I feel like Jason Verrett will follow around Davante Adams. So if this was a normal 11-game slate, you would consider that with Davante Adams. But since it's not, and Davante Adams is pretty much matchup proof, you still play him. I just don't know if Davante Adams is going to have that massive ceiling game with 2 or 3 touchdowns and 100 to 150 yards, but he's still going to have a good game. So that's why you have to play him here. But just keep that in mind. Jason Verrett will be on Davante Adams, probably following him around, and will make it a little bit more difficult for him to have a ceiling game. But he's still in play. Obviously, he's still a lock because of this way this slate is. And then other than that, yeah, Alan Lazard will be in play if he plays. I kind of like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, though. Speaking of Emmanuel Mosley, I imagine he'll be on Mosley a lot on the outside. And Valdes-Scantling is the type of guy they'll take deep shots with. And this is going to be a good weather game where Green Bay played in really bad windy weather. So Aaron Rodgers didn't take any deep shots to MVS last week. But this week, being that it's Northern California, it's going to be beautiful weather. He's going to be taking some deep shots here. It's kind of a homecoming for Aaron Rodgers. So they didn't play well in San Francisco last year. They really they got beat up pretty bad in the NFC Championship game earlier in the year. So this is kind of a revenge game narrative for Aaron Rodgers. So this is the type of game where he can really light it up. And because of tough coverage on Davante Adams, I like Marquez Valdes-Scantling here, and if you look at his price, it's really good. Eight on the Showdown slate, 8,000 on FanDuel, 3,400 on DK. I think he's a sneaky play here, and they can probably hit him for a deep shot, and he can really burn the coverage for San Francisco. Their secondary outside of Jason Verrett's pretty weak. And then, of course, we have Robert Tonyan. He looked really good last week as well. San Francisco is pretty tough against. They're pretty tough against tight ends, though. Their linebackers are pretty good at coverage, so keep that in mind. But Tunyan's still in play here because of the lack of wide receivers with the Packers passing game and the lack of really experienced running backs. And then you could also look at the Packers defense, just because the 49ers are going to look pretty ugly on offense here. So pretty much you have to, have all these players in play. But I think the sneakiest play for me right now is MVS. I don't think he's going to be as highly owned, besides locking in the pretty much mandatory Rodgers and Adams play here.
Yeah, MVS, the price tag on DraftKings really jumped out at me, 3.4 in a GPP context, because they will take deep shots with him. So if they connect on one, he's going to pay off that price tag. And it's just an interesting situation for MVS right now, because they were talking about trading for Will Fuller. Obviously, they don't have a lot of faith in MVS. He hasn't looked that great. He'll drop balls. He just doesn't quite have he just is not clicking with Aaron Rodgers. It's kind of a shame that he doesn't have somebody to trust downfield. But if Lazard comes back, obviously, the passing attack will be in a better spot. So MVS in play for me for GPPs. I don't trust his floor. He's more of a ceiling guy. In terms of some of these other guys, because, I'm going to have Rodgers and Adams. You mentioned the NFC Championship game here back in January. It was 37-20. San Francisco just ran all over them. But the one thing that worked for Green Bay was Rodgers to Adams. And so I think he will get heavy volume no matter who's on him. But if you look at other targets, Tonyan, I agree, really looked good. Here's my sleeper here to look at. It's Jay Sternberger at only 1,800 on DraftKings. He looked good last week against Minnesota, and I think the routes that he runs are going to be easier for Rodgers to hit. I don't think he'll get as much attention as Tonyan running more down the field, longer routes. So I like Sternberger here. And, that's about it. I think the other wide receivers like Equanimeous St. Brown, Darius Shepard, I think they're really going to take a step back if Lazard is out there. All right, Shane, before we go to San Francisco, let's take a minute to hear from our wonderful partners at BetUS.com.pa.
Wake up, sports bettors. Sports are in high gear at BetUS.com, so put down the beer and make every sporting event more exciting by putting stakes on the line at BetUS. Earn bragging rights over your friends as you rake in the cash from each week's betting action. But don't settle for any other book. Choose America's favorite sports book with over 25 trusted years in the industry, BetUS. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, but more importantly, you need a sports book that pays. BetUS has your game with action on football, baseball, basketball, MMA, golf, horse racing, and even esports. No other sportsbook welcomes newcomers like BetUS with their jaw-dropping sign-up bonuses. Sign up now with promo code CoachTalk for 125% sign-up bonus up to $2,000. The best in the biz. Now you have the best book in the business with the best DFS provider in the business, Coach Talk. Create your account to make point spread bets, futures bets, prop bets, entertainment bets, live bets, and more. No other sportsbook is as committed to their members as BetUS. Sign up now and get in on the winning side of the ball.
Welcome back, and thank you again to BetUS.com.pa for that wonderful offer. Again, that's for all listeners here to the podcast, not just members. Use that promo code CoachTalk, all one word, with your first deposit for that 125% match. All right, Shane, let's get into the San Francisco side of things. And it's quite a list of injuries and out indications. We've got Jimmy G injured. Kittle is out with the injury. Debo is still out. Tevin Coleman is out. They just cut Dante Pettis. Maybe they're regretting that with everybody else out. That group includes Brandon Ayuk and Kendrick Bourne on the COVID list. So what's left with all those guys out? Well, we've got Nick Mullins, of course. With the wide receivers, we've got Trent Taylor stepping into a potentially prominent role. Maybe Ross Dwelly with the tight end position. Jordan Reed is questionable, so he's the other guy. He's been on the IR, so we'll see if he comes back. He's had multiple touchdowns this year, so he could play a big role. That's, again, one more reason you got to follow the news tomorrow along with us. So with that general overview here of all of the injuries and COVID designations, what are your thoughts here on the San Francisco offense?
Yeah, going back again to the NFC Championship game, these two matchups in San Francisco against Green Bay last year, they just completely pounded the Green Bay Packers. They said, okay, your main weakness is through the running game, and guess what? We have a great running game, great scheme, great running back. So, I mean, Raheem Mostert put up 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, just completely just smashed them. So if they're going to try that game plan, that same strategy here. So that means Nick Mullins looked really good last week. So he's still in play. He's still going to pass to whoever he can pass to, whether it's wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, fullbacks, any of that type of thing. So but I don't know if Nick Mullins is going to get a ton of volume in terms of passing volume. At least in the first half, San Francisco is going to absolutely try to punish Green Bay in the running game, just like Minnesota did last week. And unfortunately, San Francisco doesn't have a Dalvin Cook, but they do have JaMycal Hasty. So great comparison, right? No, I'm joking. Right. It's not a great comparison. JaMycal Hasty looks pretty quick. It looks like he's got a little bit of moves to him, a little bit of shake. He's seems like a pretty explosive running back. So I think he's certainly in play just because of the game script and what San Francisco is going to do. So I think San Francisco has a nice run blocking advantage here, and Green Bay is not very good against the run. They're not very good at tackling, and that's fundamental. So again, it really, they can't get off blocks for whatever reason. It looked like Dalvin Cook was just running through wide open holes and into the secondary last week. So they made it look really easy. So definitely JaMycal Hasty is going to be the early down back. So you have to get some exposure to him. And then Jerick McKinnon's in play. He's a little contrarian because they priced him up on DraftKings to $8,000. People are going to avoid that because they know that Jerick McKinnon has been in the doghouse of Shanahan's doghouse for whatever reason. And he doesn't look like he's injured to me. He looks good. When they finally put him in there late in the game, we were talking about in our pregame huddle how he was lined up at wide receiver, a couple times, looked really good on some snaps, and it was catching the ball effectively. So I think that McKinnon could play some wide receiver in this game, and he could probably get some regular running back carries as well. So that's why McKinnon is in play. And I have no issue playing both San Francisco running backs because they're going to get a ton of run volume. If they don't get completely blown out and they can keep this game somewhat close, they're going to get a ton of run volume here. Even if they do get blown out, you're going to have a lot of carries from Hasty, and then McKinnon could go into the hurry up mode in the second half if they're getting blown out, just like he did last week, and he can get his carries and also get some passes there. So love the running backs for San Francisco here because I know that's what they're going to want to do. And then wide receiver, I'd probably like Trent Taylor the best. He's at pretty much minimal price. He's $400 on DraftKings or $5,000 on FanDuel. I think Richie James could be interesting if he plays. He's questionable because he's one of the more experienced San Francisco remaining wide receivers since all of them are almost out. And I actually like the fullback. Remember last year in the Super Bowl, like how good he looked when he catch the pass for the touchdown against the Chiefs there. So
yeah, Juszczyk.
Juszczyk is awesome in the passing game for a fullback. He's probably the best fullback in the game. And, this guy is just opening up all these holes for this San Francisco running game. And this might be time where he gets a little bit of payback and a little bit of love in the running game and also in the passing game. I've never seen a full looks so good in the passing game. This guy looks awesome. He can run those deep routes, even those wheel routes out there. So once in a while they line him up at wide receiver and he can beat you. So I think Juszczyk is in play here, and I think Nick Mullins really likes to dump the ball off to him. He's a reliable target. And then if Jordan Reed comes back, I'll be very interested in Jordan Reed because even though he's probably not going to play full time, when he's in there, they're going to be game planning to get him the ball. I think he's a really good tight end when he's in there. And again, Nick Mullins loves to throw underneath of these tight ends. And if Jordan Reed's out, then I'll go to Ross Dwelley, the other tight end, because I think Ross Dwelley will get quite a bit of targets from Nick Mullins here. So those are kind of the guys I'm looking at. I would focus on the running game and don't be afraid to play both running backs for San Francisco. That should set you apart a little bit. And then you can pick and choose whether. I don't think Mullins is mandatory, but it's probably a good idea to try to get him into the lineup. But there could be a scenario where they just run the ball so much that Mullins doesn't do much. So you may not have to initially play him. But that's kind of where I'm at for San Francisco here.
Yeah, well said. I agree. I think they're going to try to run it. That was crazy when Mostert had those 220 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jimmy G only attempted 8 passes that game. Remember, they didn't need to, so they didn't risk it. They ran it. It was working, and so I think they will try it. We'll see if it works. If it does work, then Hasty's in a great spot. I agree with the quickness. He can certainly get it done. Overall, Green Bay has given up the most fantasy points to running backs now this season, and it's not just that huge game from Cook last week. Cook scored 2 touchdowns against him in the first week. Kamara had 13 receptions against them for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. Gurley had 2 rushing touchdowns against them. I mean, Shane, can you believe that? Gurley, 2 rushing touchdowns.
Gurley, he's good at getting he's good at getting touchdowns. He just doesn't look good in anything else.
Right.
Yeah, he's the most touchdown dependent back out there. So right. Yeah, maybe Jerick McKinnon can be the poor man's Alvin Kamara role here. I'm good with that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think they're going to use McKinnon all over the field. He'll get some work in the backfield. He'll split out. He'll maybe even line up out wide because they need someone they can trust. They need a playmaker. He is that guy. Hit 4 catches for 40 yards last week. Good chemistry with Mullins down the stretch. And if called upon, I do think Mullins can get it done here. He had 238 yards passing in the fourth quarter against Seattle, and it was a terrific matchup, and they're playing catch-up. So he kept, dinking and dunking. But that could be what happens here. Green Bay gets ahead, and in the second half, that's what he's going to do. Short passes to McKinnon, short passes to Taylor out of the slot. He had a touchdown pass to Ross Dwelley in that fourth quarter. So he's got the chemistry there. So all the guys you mentioned are in play here and worth considering. I also could look at both running backs for San Fran. And then, if Richie James doesn't play, the other candidates to be out there for wide receiver could be Kevin White, who Bears fans know as a major disappointment, first-round draft pick out of West Virginia. And let's see, 25 career receptions and no touchdowns. So he just hasn't gotten it done. Maybe this will be an opportunity for him to get back in the groove. And then River Craycraft has 1 career reception, a 48-yarder, back in 2018 for the Broncos. And he's just been sort of a special teams player since then. So, I mean, you got to dig deep here to look at who's going to be out there and who to consider. So that's what we're going to keep doing throughout the day on Thursday. Shane, any final thoughts on this matchup here?
No, I mean, you got to be real cray-cray to play Craycraft here. But hey, this is a showdown lineup, so anything goes literally. Yeah. And they're what are they down, like 5 or 6 wide receivers at least? So right. I just can't get over that name, Craycraft.
Yeah, it's funny. That's awesome. And you really don't have to go there because of all these other guys who are either $200 or $400 on DraftKings or $5K on FanDuel. You can pretty much get anybody you want. So, I mean, it's going to be Rodgers and Adams all day in almost every lineup. I don't know if I'll put one out there without them. We'll see. But
you're not going to be in that 1% that puts someone out there without them.
I just don't know. I mean, really, it's. So. I mean, the only way I might mix it up is on DraftKings to have a different captain. That's where you get a different build. Because you don't have to do that. You can go with Rodgers or Adams as your captain and still get almost everybody in your lineup that you want, unless you want to go with both San Francisco running backs. But so that's the way I think you get unique.
Yeah, I like playing both San Francisco running backs, and if you can fit Nick Mullins in there as well with a couple of the Green Bay guys, and just not pair any wide receiver or pass catcher with Nick Mullins, because he's just going to spread the ball out to all these random guys, and these running backs will catch some balls as well. But for the most part, it's going to be, they're going to use the running backs. But what's different than those games last year is they had a really good defense that caused Aaron Rodgers a lot of problems last year, so they could keep the game low scoring and close, so they could keep pounding the ball. Now they're going to be playing from behind. Most likely Green Bay will jump out on them, and Aaron Rodgers will be able to pick this defense apart because it's not the same as it was last year. So that's where the game script is going to change. But San Francisco's still going to try it, though. They're still going to try to run the ball on these guys because it's their one weakness that's a very clear weakness here. So, absolutely. And that's what San Francisco likes to do anyways.
Absolutely. So what we'll do here is we'll invite you to subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. We'd love your support there. These podcasts are going to continue to be in front of the paywall. We do 6 NFL podcasts per week. So tune in again on Thursday. We'll have our main slate preview where we go game by game. And then over the weekend, we do position videos, quarterbacks, running backs, and then wide receiver, tight ends with our final player picks for the Sunday main slate. And then jump in with us as a member, dfscoachtalk.com, to pick up that membership. And then we'll get you in our Discord. We give out our lineups about 45 minutes before lock. So you've got all day Thursday to join if you want. In terms of connecting with us on social media, you can find all of us on Twitter at DFS Coach Talk. Shane is available at DET Sports Shane. I am at Language Olympic. Our fearless leader, the coach, is at JOESARVADI. And our charity of choice here is mambaon3.org, MAMBAONTHREE.org. So, Shane, great work again, as always, digging in here, getting everybody ready for the Thursday night primetime slate. And make sure to tune in again on Thursday for our main slate preview. So that's going to do it here. On behalf of Shane Caldwell and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hansen. Thank you so much for tuning in, and be sure to tune in next time as we look to crush it in DFS.